Muses of Mythology is a spoiler-heavy podcast.
That's an understatement.
We're going to discuss not just the events of this book, but the Rhineverse as a whole, and really anything that we feel is relevant. You can find full spoiler warnings in the show notes. I saw somewhere...
Swallowed wrong.
Oh no. I saw somewhere...
I'm fine. Go ahead. Keep going.
Welcome to Muses of Mythology, a podcast where we explore how ancient myths become part of modern pop culture through the lens of Rick Riordan's Magnus Chase and the gods of Asgard. This is Story 94, Asgard. I'm your co-host and podcasting muse, Darien and Smartt. Joining me is my co-host and brother, DJ.
How's everybody doing today? I'm DJ the Muse, and I am exhausted.
Well, DJ, respectfully, what else is new?
I mean, what's new is I didn't take my Adderall today. I'm running low, and I expect a text for when it's like, oh, you know, your prescription's ready. I didn't get that last month.
Uh-huh.
And so now I'm down to my last one.
DJ!
Like, oh, fuck. And it's crazy. It affects my mood like a crazy amount.
Yeah!
I'm like, wow, did I really
It's
do
a
this shit
mental
without it?
health
It's crazy.
pill.
It's nuts.
Okay, we need to go muse around in the garden about this for a minute. DJ, I would say this is a big one.
It is. It's Asgard.
It is, yeah. It's weird.
But I assume, being the fact that you say you would say, there's not a lot of it in the Eddas.
No, okay, so I'm realizing now that the way I worded that was kind of weird. Like, I would say, because it is the big one. It's Asgard. I don't know. I was trying something, and it just...
Maybe next time, I want to say this is a big one.
I'll
say this is a big one.
Yeah, yep, that was right. It was really my inflection.
Because it's like... I want to say it's a big one, or it's like...
I'm going to say this, DJ, this is a big one.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we just pretend I said that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Okay, DJ, this is a big one.
Oh, wow, crazy. It's Asgard, so I assumed.
Yes, it is Asgard. And okay, but as you did say, it's simultaneously a big one, and also, spoiler, only mentioned in the Eddas twice.
Nice.
Well, the poetic Eddas. But before we get into that, DJ, what do you remember of Asgard in the Magnus Chase books?
It's empty because all the gods fled, but also arguably because Rick didn't want to have to come up with a bunch of Norse gods.
Damn, shots fired!
We typically just hang out in Hotel Valhalla, which is in Asgard. So.
Yeah. No, yeah, that
it's kind of because it's like Gunhilda brought him up. It's like, do you see anything out there? And he's like, wow, it's a lot, but I don't see any people. And she's like, yeah, all the gods left. Because they're scared of Ragnarok coming.
Yeah, and then that just doesn't get revisited.
It never does.
Mm-mm.
We never touch down on that again. But again, I assume it's solely because Rick probably really didn't want to come up with a bunch of gods.
I guess, but it's like when they're in like Mount Olympus, they just mention that they see a lot of like gods and nymphs and like demigods and stuff. Like you don't have to name them.
One could argue that you like being how vast Greek is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. You could at the very least think, oh, there's probably this stupid esoteric or niche fucking god or muse or nymph that's just running around. I can't really tell it because like we also know typically the different like magical creatures don't intermingle.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
They don't cross over worlds, so it would only be populated by gods.
That's also true. Yeah,
So,
the realms are very distinct, whereas we can believe that Mount Olympus, there are a bunch of other like mythological
of course there would be
creatures.
like nymphs and shit because they like help their servants of the gods.
Basically,
extent,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. That's a really good point. I hadn't considered that. It's also, but the thing about that is not wanting to think of a bunch of gods is that he does that in 9 from the 9 when Alex sneaks into Muspelheim and listens to Surt's meeting. There's like a ton of like weird, obscure gods around. So it's definitely.
But they're also, I don't know if, are they Norse? Aren't they like, are they
No,
all
they're
Norse?
all really weird, obscure Norse gods.
Yeah. I thought it was just really weird, obscure other pantheon gods that Surt's grabbing.
That would have been
like,
super cool.
We're going to make our own.
But he's not there yet.
Okay.
No, because they all reference like.
No, we're waiting for that big one that's going to have Cain, Magnus, and Roman or like heroes all combined.
As Erica from Seaweed Brain refers to it as like Rick Riordan's Multiverse of Madness.
Hopefully it's better.
The bar is literally buried in hell, so
for that. But,
hey, you know
it's not a multiverse because it's not a multiverse.
It is distinctly not a multiverse. You're absolutely right. It's not. You know what was great? Agatha all along. I'm not going to talk about that right now. But you know what? And also the great thing about Agatha all along is I can just put in my headcanon about what actually happened in Multiverse of Madness and then just get what I want, and it completely continues. It does not matter what actually happened, except for the fact that Wanda dies or is no longer in the game. I haven't watched the last 2 episodes at this point, but that's the only thing that matters between WandaVision and this one.
Fucking multiverse Wanda. Like, you already established that. Why did it have to be the one from the cinematic?
Because the writer really just wanted to write an evil Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, you could have.
You could have.
You still could have.
Still could have. Yeah.
Anyway, no, we're continuing.
No, we can't do this. I think you're totally right about Rick Riordan just not wanting to mess around in Asgard because Valhalla is in Asgard. So we can't say that we never go to Asgard. But even in 9 from the 9, But
it's more along the lines of you're allowed to go to New York, but you're actually stuck at their art museum.
Yes, it's as if
That's the only place you can go to.
It's as if we were in the Met the whole time.
That's what I was about to say. I'm like, that's in Europe. That's like
that's
not
France. No, but yeah, but it'd be like if you went to France and then if your book was set in France, but the characters were only ever in the Louvre.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be incorrect to say the book is set in Paris, but the characters never go anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a murder mystery in the Louvre, which I'm like into, but
okay, that's also I think not entirely true. They do go to Thor's house to see Sif. And that
wasn't that like through the elevator of Hotel Valhalla though?
I think so. And that is also in Asgard. His hall is just like Valhalla is technically in Asgard, but we never go but also like when Gunilla shows him, it is like that is Asgard
it's a city.
And so it like does kind of
it's pretty much just like Boston again, like which is gold.
Yeah, it does suggest there's like a separation between Valhalla and Asgard, and it is weird that even in 9 from the 9, it still is only in Valhalla. We don't go to like, well, Valhalla is Odin's hall. I was about to say Odin's hall. Valhalla is Odin's hall, but like anywhere,
we don't go to Odin's house.
Well, the hall is the house.
Well, does Odin live there?
Yeah,
because I wouldn't live in my hall.
That's what a hall is.
That's ridiculous.
That's what the hall is in Norse like Germanic culture. The hall is the home. It's the palace, basically. And then the gods being all gone. Are we left? Oh, and then even at the end when we go to that place that they're not in Asgard at the end on the boat ride either. They're somewhere else. I was about to say they all end up back in Asgard at the end, but that's not true either. That's somewhere else.
Yeah, they're in that island between.
Yeah, that plays with the final battle will be, yeah. And it is odd that there's just no... Yeah, they just don't go to Asgard. And we also don't ever, like, after they solve...
It could have been really cool to have, like, a scene a la Percy Jackson and The Last Olympian where they're just walking through Mount Olympus. Or they're just walking through Asgard.
Yeah, and the difference is they would be just allowed to do that. They could just do that.
They live there.
They live there. Like, yes, their home is the hall, but like, there's no reason they can't go hang out. And that would be kind of cool if you got to expand the world a little bit more. And like, what does it? I don't know. All their needs are met in the hotel, so they have no reason to. But
so
I don't know. It is an odd thing.
Why does all their needs need to be met in the hotel?
Well. Because they're the Einherji.
Yeah, but it's like, well, I can't get... They go to Boston for fucking pizza. You're telling me Asgard doesn't have a specific food that the hotel doesn't offer?
I know, it's weird, right?
That's nuts.
I mean, I think it's funny that we Boston, like, we gotta go to Boston and get pizza. Like, I love that. And then go hang out there. I don't know. It's weird. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. And we never circle back to the whole gods being gone thing. Like, are they gone until the end of the 3rd book? Are they gone after we deal with the Fenris thing?
Is like Ragnarok just truthfully so fucking close that the gods never want to return to Asgard?
Yeah, where are they gonna go? Nowhere. You all know your fate. Like, why would they leave when they're all so willing to embrace what their fate will be, like leaving and acting like they're scared of it.
Maybe it's only like the ones we meet are like ready to accept that fate, but everyone else like, I don't want to fucking die. Are you kidding me?
Very interesting. That'd be a very interesting concept that we don't ever see. So that's really the weird thing that I noticed when I was reflecting on it, is that like we're there in Valhalla, but we never like go to Asgard, and the gods thing just kind of gets dropped, or the gods not being there gets dropped. So, okay, etymology of Asgard. It's very similar to Midgard, where it meant like, middle yard, middle enclosure.
Top place.
Well, specifically, it's enclosure of the Aesir. So home, like yard of the gods, home of the gods. And I thought it was really interesting how those two words, like Midgard and Asgard, are so similar, but none of the other ones have that same like enclosure. And that kind of just ties back to...
We were made in God's image.
I mean, yes, and Cinder and Snore give us a lot of this for sure, but it also kind of goes back to what we talked about in the Jotunheim episode, where like that's where you go to adventure. That is the wild, the untamed. Midgard is literally like enclosed, it's yard, it is civilization. So the gods would also have that. Like you don't have giants attacking and monsters rampaging here because this is safe. This is civilization.
Yeah,
it's a threat that could happen if we lose the order and stability we have. But I thought it was interesting that those two, the home of the gods and the home of like mortals, have such a similar connection and are distinctly set apart from everything else. I think it like indicates the relationship the Nordic people felt that they had to their gods in a very distinct way, where they are separate but inherently connected, especially when we get to talking about the Bifrost, which we'll get to. As I said, Asgard, specifically the word Asgard, is only mentioned twice in the Poetic Edda. In the Poetic Edda gives us lots of names and places where the gods dwell or meet. In the Sibyl's Prophecy, twice it's said that the Aesir meet at a place called Idavall. We hit it first in the very beginning of the poem, where it's a place where they meet right before that woman shows up who dies and then comes back, and then the wars. We talked about that in the Vanir episode. And then at the end, after Ragnarok, the surviving Aesir, including Balder and Hod, meet again at Idavall.
Nice.
So, and then another poem, Grimir's Sayings, gives us like a lot of locations. Specifically, it just cites like all of the grand halls that the Aesir dwell in. And we get like Thor's Hall and Baldur's Hall and Nord's Hall and stuff like that. None of them are said to be in Asgard. But they're just places. Now, the only places that we get Asgard mentioned is first in Hymir's poem, which is, quote, a badly preserved manuscript. So we actually don't have the full thing. And this poem is about the Aesir deciding they're going to have a feast, and then deciding that a giant named Aegir is going to prepare it for them. And in the version of the Poetic Edda we reference by...
Real quick, Aegir is the name of the sea god in East 10.
DJ, having fun playing the new East game?
I've already beaten it.
Oh, you already beat it? Congratulations!
Yeah, that's why it's not in the living room.
Well, that makes sense. I did notice that the tower wasn't downstairs.
I beat it. I 100%ed it on hard difficulty. I'm like, I don't need to do New Game Plus. I don't want to do Nightmare. I'm going to go play zombies now.
Nice.
Fucking great game. Highly recommend the East game, fellas.
Nice. And the translation I have by Caroline Larrington notes that the tradition of like the Asgard, the Aesir showing up and like making this giant make them a feast may actually reflect like an Icelandic tradition where the king would show up to like the hall of one of his subordinates and they would be expected to provide a feast for the visiting king. Yeah. So it's not quite so like, this is super weird. Why they're just showing up this guy's house and demanding they cook for him. Like that might just be the way things were. The king rolled up and you prepared a feast for the king. Aegir doesn't super love that, and he does agree, but on the grounds that they have to provide a kettle big enough for him to brew beer for everybody. So it's a massive kettle, and everyone's like, no one has a kettle this big. And actually, Tyr recalls that the giant Hymir owns such a kettle, and then he and Thor set off to go pick it up.
Shout out Tyr. He's a goat.
It's actually Hymir, you may recall, is the giant that Thor goes fishing with when he catches the Midgard serpent. And that story is relayed within this poem.
Whoa.
It's like a side part where they talk about how this happened. And so we know...
It's here, I'm going to be right back. I got a bone. I got a bone to pick. I'll be right back.
Basically, yeah. And as you recall, at the end of the poem, of the story where Thor goes fishing, he throws the giant into the water and then storms home. Apparently, the giant survived in order to be in this kettle retrieving story. So in that poem, it says, they journeyed hard that day and far from Asgard until they came to Egil. He secured their goats with splendid horns, and they headed for the hall which Hymir owned. So just literally, that's it. They leave Asgard and go there.
They show up to Hymir's place like, hey man, you want to cook for us?
No, they just need to, hey man, we just need to borrow your giant kettle.
It's just they're in this predicament because they demanded somebody
so
cook
they just
for
go
them.
someone else is like, you want to cook for us?
You want to cook for us? But it's just like, yeah, after they get the feast, they're like, okay, we need to borrow your kettle.
What?
Well, it's like these two are going out and they show up.
Hymir would be like, what do you mean you need to borrow? It's dirty now. I have to wash it.
Yeah, well, like, we just did this whole, like, greetings and, stuff at another place, and he demanded a kettle big enough to serve us all, and there's like 30 people back there, so we need your big fucking kettle.
And then thanks for providing sandwiches.
We appreciate you for cooking for us, so we're gonna go have another dude cook for us and 28 more people.
And everyone's still waiting up for us to show up with that kettle. So that's the first time Asgard is mentioned in the prose edda. The second time, and I say first and second because like that's the order in which these poems appear.
Mm-hmm. But it's arguably not the order that they are actually
right? Like
the
way the poems are collected, or the way they were collected within the Codex Regius, right? Which is where we get the poetic edda, excuse me. And that's just the way the order is, but it doesn't, like, we can tell some are super important. Like the Sibyl's poem, that first one is like has so much about the cosmology and the history, and so we can like extrapolate that was probably considered super important. But when I say first and second, that's really just the order in which they appear in this book, but not necessarily like maybe the order they would have been known. I don't know. I just felt like I needed to mention that.
Yeah.
So the second time we find it in the Poetic Edda is in Thrymir's poem. And this is where we get the story of Thor's hammer being stolen by the giant Thrymir, and him and Loki having to dress up like a bridal party to go retrieve it.
Nice.
And Heimdall is actually the one who suggests, hey, after Freya refuses to participate in these shenanigans,
Absolutely not.
He's the one that suggests, well, why don't you just dress up like Freya and her bridal stuff, and then you can sneak in and get your hammer. And initially, Thor is like, absolutely not. The Aesir will call me perverse if I let you tie a bridal headdress on me. Then Loki, Laufey's son, said, be quiet, Thor. Don't speak these words. The giants will be settling in Asgard unless you get your hammer back. And essentially, like, Loki's being like, my guy, you really need to, the most important thing right now is you getting your hammer back, or we're gonna have problems.
The only way to do it, you gotta fucking swallow that pride, bud.
Do you want giants moving in? Settling in Asgard? Which raises a little xenophobic to me, but...
Well, I mean,
it's not even invading,
it's giants,
just settling.
It's giants,
We don't want that. In swinging over to the prose Edda, in the Gylfaginning, Snorri describes like how the gods made the world, and we discussed this in the Midgard episode about Ymir and how his skull and Asgard was created on the brow. And in that episode, we talked about how like Midgard was like the center. But Snorri actually goes on and says that Asgard was actually built at the center of the world. And to either Snorri is providing a additional like cultural context for what Idavall is, or he made this creative decision to basically like coalesce these two ideas of Asgard and Idavall. He says that Idavall is at the center of Asgard. So the place where the gods meet, Idavall, is the place within Asgard. Mm-hmm. In the Gylfaginning, we get another interesting story about Asgard. And it's after Midgard was created, and then after Valhalla was created, a talented smith arrived on a horse, offering to build a walled fortress for the Aesir in just 3 seasons. Incredible. What a deal. Mm-hmm. In exchange, he wanted to not only marry Freya, but also he wanted the sun and the moon.
Soul's her own person. She don't need that.
She don't need that. And apparently Loki was put in charge of negotiating. And
He's like, yeah, okay.
He said...
You get everything you want. I don't know. I don't fucking give a shit about these people.
No, what he said was, okay, deal, but you have to complete it in one season. You have to complete it by the end of winter. If anything is unfinished on the first day of summer, no deal, and no one else can help you. And the smith thinks about it. He's like, okay, deal, if I can use my horse. My horse has to be able to help me. And Loki thinks about it. He's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, a horse is not gonna, like, you're not getting it done in one season with like, just a horse.
6 months.
So,
it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. So deal, go for it, man. Anyway, so this horse is crazy strong and like super fast. So it is very obvious that this smith is going to get the job done on time. Absolutely no problem. And the Aesir are like, okay, hey man, who not only is Freya going to have to go off with this stranger, but also all of heaven and earth are going to be thrust into chaos because this dude's going to make off with the sun and the moon. Who the hell agreed to these terms? And, Loki caused this problem, so now Loki has to fix it. He's like, okay, I'll fix it. And so we get Loki turning into a mare, distracting the stallion for a day. And just that one day is enough to set off, like, not all the progress, but puts the timeline way back, and it becomes instantly obvious that he's not going to make it in time.
That's how construction goes.
Yeah, no matter what.
It's like one day gets fucked, and you're like, oh, God, there goes the whole fucking thing.
Exactly. Like, now he will not, even with the horse back, he will not get it done in time. So, the smith flies into a rage, reveals he's a mountain giant, and the Aesir all go, deals off. They call off Thor. Thor deals with the problem by just killing this guy.
You lied.
He did lie. He did hide the fact. He had him swear oath, but did not, reveal that he was a mountain giant, which, okay.
Let's not giving all the details up front. That's not cool.
Exactly. So Asgard is actually never mentioned in this story, but scholars generally take it to be like, this is the fortress he's building. Like this enclosure.
He's building Asgard.
Yeah, enclosure of the Aesir. He's building Asgard.
It's just contracted other people. Like, can you guys finish what he was doing?
That was like, another thing I was going to say is that it also nowhere states whether or not the building ever got finished. Which I think would have been a very, very funny thing for Ireland to like play with if they ever went into Asgard.
Yeah, there's just like half of Asgard, like bricks, cement bags, fucking just unfinished, untouched. Like, yeah, the guy who was doing it,
not even half. Like, let's say like it's a fifth. Like, there's a part of the wall, and there's just like a mile worth of wall that never got finished, and they're just like, or like 100 yards.
Yeah, the dude that was building it just like died.
It was crazy. Yeah, weird. And never got finished. Weird. And like, wait, what? That's why all the gods skip town in Asgard, because it's not actually as well defended as you think it is. The building never got done.
Yeah.
In the Skaldskaparmal, which is another one of the prose Eddas, Asgard is also cited as being home of the Aesir. And in this same collection, it's where Thor is given the title Defender of Asgard. The thing about Snorri is that he says, Asgard is built in the middle of the world. But he also says it's like up in the heavens connected by the Bifrost. And so this is a thing that scholars have had to like try to figure out what cosmologically the realms, these worlds looked like to the Nordic people, which is something we've talked about before, how it's like the realms may be a misnomer or this or that, or was Snorri relaying various beliefs that were shared at the time, or was it more he was being influenced by his own Christian beliefs and writing things to really reflect
mix of everything, it sounds like.
Yeah, and so other scholars have said that like it trying to create a map of the realms is basically kind of silly. It would kind of be like trying to create a map of what like earth, heaven, and hell would be for
the map to
Christians.
the realms is just a little hand turkey. I don't know what you guys want from me.
What?
It's a South Park joke.
Oh, okay.
I already explained it once on the podcast.
Okay, I do not remember. It's somewhere else. I do not remember. If anyone knows,
I don't remember what episode it was, but I did explain the whole because it was like a pilgrim thing. It was really funny.
Oh, okay, I do remember this now. Where it's like the idea of like, it's heaven's in the sky and hell's under the earth. Except we know it's like folks who like Christians who believe this. No, that's not. They aren't tangible locations like that.
You say up in heavens, but it's not like actually.
You're not going to get there with a rocket ship, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to dig down into the earth. Like it's
You'll get something akin to hell if you dig down, though. It gets fucking hot down there.
And so it does have to be kind of like we would say these terms and say these places while simultaneously understanding that that's not a physical location you could reach by traveling, except when sometimes people just walk to Helheim. So, but you can also say souls would travel to the underworld. Like, it is layers. It's pieces. It's a little ethereal, and trying to create a hard and fast rule of like, this is what the world looked like to the Nordic people. It's a fruitless endeavor.
Mm.
Now, another thing that Snorri said, and this is something I mentioned way back in when we talked about the Edda's episode, is that people knew Asgard by another name, Troy. And he said that the Aesir came from Asia, and they were all known by the great halls and stuff, and this great city of gods was really just Troy, from the Iliad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why?
Why are we tying it to this? What the fuck?
And Snorri does this, we believe, for two reasons. First, because he really wants you to remember that these are not gods, capital G God. These are just like, hey, these stories are cool, but they're not really gods and they're not really deities. So, like, don't forget, there's only one capital G God. I talked about him all up in here. And secondly, it is to anchor his cultural stories and traditions with that of the European classics. This is not the only time this has been done.
Mm-hmm.
In the Aeneid, which is this story like Virgil wrote of Aeneas, who was of Troy and founding Rome.
Yeah.
The idea that you could anchor the city of Rome to this great city of Troy and these great epics by Homer and stuff, like, that was a specific thing to try to elevate your own cultural identity by anchoring it to that of the ancient greats. So, that is what Snorri is doing when he says that Asgard is also Troy.
Nuts. Insane.
Kind of, listen, I don't know if it worked the same way that the Aeneas pulled it off. I'll have to do a little bit more digging. But yeah, seems like kind of wild.
Yeah, trying to say Asgard is Troy is a little nuts.
Yeah.
A little crazy.
DJ, what do you know about the Bifrost?
It's a rainbow bridge?
It is a rainbow bridge.
I know in like the original texts, it only connects to Asgard and Midgard, but when it's used, it kind of just is used to go anywhere.
Yes. Yep. So Snorri again, he shouts out that, Asgard is above Midgard in the heavens, attached by the Bifrost. Etymologically, there's no concrete agreed upon translation for what Bifrost means. Scholar Andy Orchard has suggested that it may have meant like shimmering path, suggesting the fleeting nature of a rainbow. And but another scholar, Austrian Germanist Rudolf Semek, who we've mentioned several times, has said that it either means the swaying road to the heavens, or that it was perhaps the fleetingly glimpsed rainbow, which I thought was interesting and wild because I never really thought about Bifrost.
It could just be what is it? It probably could just mean rainbow.
Probably.
Right? Just like they saw a rainbow after it rains, like, oh, the Bifrost.
The Bifrost. That's interesting. I always say Bifrost, but Bifrost.
I've heard Bifrost be used recently in other media. Not in East. Maybe in East.
What did it say in East?
I think they said Bifrost, but in something else, they said Bifrost, and I'm like, oh, okay.
I think there is this interesting, silly juxtaposition of the idea of the Vikings, who are this like warrior, raider, tough, violent people,
but they
having
always
like
appreciated a rainbow.
Appreciating a rainbow, being like, you'll cross the rainbow to get to where our gods live.
Yeah. And
that feels very like leprechauns and silly.
Well, it's just like the afterlife is supposed to be a happy thing, even for this warrior race, and the rainbows are always nice to see.
So I'm going to read to you a stanza from Grimir Saints, which is the first reference to the Asgardian or the Aesir's bridge that we get in the Poetic Edda. Kormt and Ormt and the two Kurgslar, these Thor must wade every day when he goes to give judgments at Yggdrasil's ash, for the Aesir's bridge burns all with flames, the sacred waters boil.
It's a hot bridge.
It's a hot bridge. And then later on in the same poem, I've mentioned this stanza where we just cite, like, here are all of the best things. And the best things being, Yggdrasil's ash is the most permanent of trees, as is Skindblarnir of ships, Odin of the Aesir, Slipnir of horses, Bifrost of bridges, Bragi of poets, Hawkbork of hawks, and Garm of dogs. So the general consensus is the Bifrost Bridge, named in this stanza, is what is referencing the Aesir's burning fire bridge, mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, it's so strange to me that Marvel decided to also turn the Bifrost into like a weapon.
Well, we get to that. Pin in that. You can't just do that at the end of the episode.
Every time I like think about what like Loki's plan for that, I'm like, why? Why was that even an option?
Well, it's a wormhole connecting 2 points in space. It creates the area around it to be very unstable if it's opened for too long.
Yeah, but it was acting like a space drill.
Well, it was like causing the point of contact to become unstable and things were breaking around
Ridiculous.
it. Yeah. It is ridiculous.
This is nuts. I don't understand it. Why was it freezing?
It was Jotunheim. It was cold.
That's ridiculous. Freezing the lightning coming off this fucking thing and tendrils of ice? No.
That's the problem you have with it.
It's dumb.
I thought it was fun.
It was visually great, but it's just like you think about like they just don't ever use it again.
Well, because he broke it. Thor had to break it.
They made it again. The Bifrost showed up again, I'm pretty sure.
I think Heimdall was using his power specifically to transport.
Ridiculous. Just Heimdall can now activate the Bifrost at will. Fucking goofy.
I think it was his sword. Okay, so one more time when the Bifrost is named in the Poetic Edda is in a poem called The Lay of Fafnir. And this is that dragon that we talked about. In this poem, it is actually when the hero Sigurd kills Fafnir. But that just happens at the beginning where he just stabs him in the stomach. And then we get a chunk of the poem where they're just like talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And Sigurd says, "Tell me, Fafnir, you are said to be wise and know a great deal. What is the island called where Surt and the Aesir will mingle sword liquid together?" Fafnir said, "Not yet made it's called, and there all the gods shall sport with their spears. Bifrost will break as they journey away, and their horses flounder in the great river." So we get that the story of like how Surt and the soldiers, the sons of Muspelheim, will march all across the bridge onto Asgard. Here we get to the part where it will break beneath them, which is something that Snorri explores further in the Gelfeningning, which has its own little chapter, Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge. And DJ, do you remember what the setup of the Gelfeningning is?
Odin's talking to his three selves.
Actually, almost. A dude is
talking to
Odin's three ends. Yes, nice.
It's also funny to think that
Odin is talking.
It's Odin is the king, and he's talking to his three selves.
Maybe. So then Gangleri asked, "What is the path from earth to the heavens?" Then snickering, Hai answered, "Your question shows little knowledge. Haven't you heard that the gods built a bridge from the earth to the sky, and it's called the Bifrost? You have seen it, and possibly you call it a rainbow. It has 3 colors and great strength, and is made with more skill and knowledge than other constructs. Sturdy though it is, it will break when the sons of Muspel ride over it at Ragnarok. Their horses will swim great rivers, and so they will advance." And he says, "Look, well, it must not be so great if it's going to break." Hai replied, "The gods deserve no blame for the construction. Bifrost is a sound bridge, but nothing in the world can be trusted when the sons of Muspel attack."
Hey, dude, it works great, but you want to crash a fucking boat into it, it's not going to stand all too well, you know? You're going to use it as function, it's going to be great, but you exceed its weight limit.
Mm-hmm. What I think is super interesting is that line about it having 3 colors.
Red, yellow, and blue. And it just...
yeah. The thing about color...
Or what was it? It's like teal, magenta, and yellow.
I think so, yeah.
It's like the true primary colors or some shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because for a long time, orange wasn't a color. Like it was.
Yeah.
It existed.
But people registered it as like what, red?
It was a red color. Yeah, or you maybe say red yellow, right?
And then we got the fruits. Called those oranges.
And because they're named after a place in France. The color orange comes from the fruit because the fruit became popular, and so then it became a specific name
give me
for the
that
shade.
Orange colored marker. And I was like, okay. Here's that orange colored marker. And everyone's like, oh, it's just orange now.
Yes, exactly. Right. And then in other places, blue and green are like that. Like you can find like etymologically colors becoming their own distinct color when for the longest time you would have just called orange red or like green blue or pink red. Like it happens with time. And so the idea that with this line of like the rainbow is made of 3 colors sounds odd to our ear when we're like it's made of 7.
It's a rainbow, but it's because it's red, yellow, and blue, and those are the primary colors.
Yeah, we identify the color. We identify the colors in between, or like in the terms of like purple, indigo, going past blue, as being distinct in a way that we can see the Icelandic people at the time just wouldn't have.
Yeah,
and I thought that was really cool. Another thing that's actually really cool about the Bifrost, if you skip ahead a couple chapters, Snorri discusses it again and mentions how, because Gangleri, they talk about like the Bifrost and all the worlds again, and he asked, does fire burn over the Bifrost? Hai replied, the red you see in the rainbow is the burning fire. Frost giants and the mountain giants would scale heaven if the Bifrost could be traveled by all who wanted to do so.
Nice.
Not just anybody can use the Bifrost, and also it's on fire. And that's a thing I don't think we get enough of, is that it is on fire. This is a burning fire bridge.
The red part is fire.
Is fire, yeah.
What's the yellow and blue part?
It's probably the path. Or it's probably the yellow is the actual path and the blue is the river that Thor wades through. And you ask, why is Thor wading through? And I say,
he's going to Jotunheim.
I say I'm not entirely sure.
Well, he wades through a river to get to Jotunheim.
He does. Henry Adams Bellows commented that, the stanza mentioning Thor wading to the river could mean that Thor has to go on foot in the last days of the destruction when the bridge is burning. Another interpretation, however, is that when Thor leaves the heavens, i.e. when a thunderstorm is over, the rainbow bridge becomes hot in the sun. But the way Bellows words that implies that the bridge isn't always on fire or is only on fire when Thor is gone. And it sounds like the bridge is on fire all the time. I saw somewhere where it said that Thor can't cross it because he's so like heavy and strong he could break it. But I couldn't find that replicated in any of the texts or any of like scholarly interpretation. One less Bifrost fun fact is that the scholars John Lindau and Rudolf Simek have both suggested that the Bifrost may have been the Milky Way.
Nice.
Which, if you've ever actually seen the Milky Way without light pollution, you can believe it's a path traveled by the gods, and that maybe you can see more colors in it, but it does sound like rainbow, red, blue, like I guess we're saying red. Like there are colors in it. I would wonder if is there red in the Milky Way when viewed without light pollution, and that could be pretty cool.
I guess I mean like maybe you'd be able to see you might be able to see like red stars, but I feel like I've seen pictures of the Milky Way, and every picture I've seen, even ones taken from like space, the Milky Way's not red.
Yeah.
It never really hits red notes in my mind.
Yeah.
But they might also be saying that the purple part of it could be red. But maybe that's also where they're saying it's blue. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But that is the Bifrost. Now I want to get into a couple Aesir's who are noted, thank you. Noted, especially in the Magnus books. But not enough that I think they could have carried their own episode. So, and they're also 2 that I've already mentioned in this episode. And I'd like to start with Tyr.
Okay.
DJ, what do you remember about Tyr from the Magnus Chase books?
TJ's dad. Bashful.
Bashful?
Well, not good with humans. Yeah,
Oh.
well, he's a little bashful when he's approaching TJ. He's like,
Well, bashful's
Good
such a
job.
sweet way to put that.
well, that's what he is.
No, I like that. That's such a great adjective choice.
He's like proud of his son, but he doesn't know how to like express it. You know?
I challenge you to shake my hand.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
It's very good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he's the god of?
Law and justice. He's the law. I think he's like the law bringer.
Oh.
Is at the very least the title he gets in Smite.
I think at some point in time, TJ says that he was like a war deity, but that kind of got usurped by like Odin and Thor a little bit.
Well, you know.
And that
The lawgiver is what he is in Smite.
lawgiver is good. Do you remember anything otherwise notable about Tyr specifically?
Are you trying to get me to bring up the fact he doesn't got a hand?
Yes, I am trying to get you to mention the whole one hand because the wolf ate it thing.
Yeah, the wolf. He put his hand inside Fenrir's mouth so that Fenrir would stop moving for a little bit while they tied him up. And when Fenrir realized that these chains actually couldn't be broken, he took Tyr's hand.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's something super, super interesting about Tyr. He was a super ancient deity.
Nice.
Like, in ancient in a way that might predate
Norse.
other, yeah. And I think we talked a little bit this about Nord.
The ocean guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went back and it's like he may have had like a twin sister at some point in time. It may be like that kind of like proto-Indo-European thing. Like these are proto-Norse versions of his name literally translate to deity or god. And there's an idea that this may, like, Tyr may have been an epithet for a god,
Mm-hmm.
and that we have lost that god's name, like, to time. We just don't have what this god's name actually was beyond the epithet. And that the also, like, the inclinations of the name associate him with war or thing. DJ, you reminded me of this the other night. What is thing in the context of Norse culture?
Meeting.
Exactly.
Because, hey, guys, in East 10,
There it is.
the Jarl of the Nordic representation they're actually the Normans. Yeah, the Jarl is like, I got to call a thing. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is what they call meeting.
Yeah, it's a tribal council, assembly of the free people of the community. Kind of what you'd have like a town hall.
Yeah.
It's a thing. And so there's a idea that this deity was likely really associated with those. What is called the T rune, it's that rune that looks kind of like an arrow, is also associated with this deity's name, Tyr. And we also, the day of the week, Tuesday, is etymologically related to this version of Tyr's name. Yep. And so, just the basic fact that this word means God gives us an inclination that, like, oh, this deity is a lot older and maybe was a lot more weighted culturally at one point in time, because we don't really get, like, Tyr is mentioned, right? Like, he's around the way, like, gods are around, but he doesn't do much. Like, his hand gets bitten off by Fenrir's wolf. That's the one.
That's it?
Yeah.
That's kind of what he's got.
That one we get is mentioned in Snorri gives us that from the Skaldskaparmal, where he's mentioned as the one-handed or feeder of the wolf, battle god, son of Odin. All these different things. Tyr also calls out Loki's shit in Loki's quarrel, as does, everybody. I think we've cited his passage a couple times because he's the one that steps in and, like, stands up for Frey when Loki starts talking shit about him, and he's the one that says, like, he would never make a girl cry, nor any man's wife. Like, he's a great dude. And Loki says, "Be silent, Tyr. You could never deal straight between two people. Your right hand, I must point out, is the one which Fenrir tore from you." Tyr said, "I've lost my hand, but you've lost the famous wolf. Evil brings pain to us both. It is not pleasant for the wolf, who must in shackles wait for the twilight of the gods." To which Loki says, "Be silent, Tyr. It happened that your wife had a son by me."
I fucked your girl.
Yeah. And
Cuck.
And you know what's super interesting is that when I was like digging through and doing like all this research on Tyr, like nowhere did it actually say, oh, and also Tyr's wife had an affair with Loki and had a child by him.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, and I fucked your bitch.
Yeah.
Loki's just straight talking shit that whole fucking time.
Yeah,
like, it's not true.
And then circling back to how for some reason we decide that Loki must be telling the truth about
it's ridiculous.
Freyr and Freya's parentage and them hooking up with each other. But like any other time he talks shit, it's not true.
Yeah,
like it's not
ridiculous.
treated as if that's legit. So that's just another thing I'm like, wait, nowhere does it deign to mention that except for this one. Anyway.
Yeah.
I will have plenty more to say about it when we get to the Loki episode, because what the hell? Because you think that the one time where like Tyr gets his hand bitten off, he'd be like a big player in that poem, and he's like not though. That's like the one thing that happens. He's the one brave enough to put the hand in the wolf's mouth, which is so that's a big deal about him. But the poem in which Tyr actually is like the main protagonist is that one we mentioned earlier, where they're gonna go get the kettle from Hymir.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this poem, Tyr's the one that's like, hey, Hymir has a big kettle we can use. And when he brings that up, his exact wording on the matter, to the east of Ilvagar lives Hymir, the very wise, at sky's end. My father, the brave man, owns a cauldron, a capricious kettle, a league deep.
So his dad is Hymir?
Mm-hmm. And then we get, as they travel, like him and Thor go together, as we said earlier. The lad found his grandmother. Very ugly she seemed to him. 900 heads she had.
Why?
And then later on, they get to Hymir's place. When he entered, the icicles tinkled.
Hymir, Gam Gam's not doing so hot. Maybe you should go check on your mom.
A woman greets them and says, when Hymir comes in, "Greetings, Hymir, be of good humor. Now our son has come to your hall, he whom we've expected on his long journeyings. Hod's adversary accompanies him. Friend of warriors, Vior is his name." And
Vior?
I don't know, man. Just don't worry about it. So anyway, the giant's not pleased, and he throws some shit around. Thor and Hymir hide in a kettle. Not Hymir. Thor and Tyr hide in a kettle. The kettle's fortunately very strong and survives this. And then we get into the whole Thor and Hymir go on a fishing trip story and this back and forth. And Tyr isn't mentioned again in this poem until the very end, where he fails to pick up the kettle twice and then Thor carries it home. So here's what's interesting is
Tyr just seems to be getting shafted a little bit.
yes, and actually he may not have been
he does a really cool thing, and then it's like, that's it.
Yeah, and actually that may not have been him. So scholars are really like, the fact when he mentions that Hymir is his father and his grandmother has 900 heads, like we know so little about Tyr that like, yeah, maybe. But scholars actually think that maybe he wasn't the original protagonist of this poem.
Yeah.
And that it was actually probably Loki, who usually is the one going on adventures with Thor into Giant Land.
It would make sense.
And so it was Loki, and Loki, whose father is a giant.
Yeah, father's
And
giant,
so
so it would make sense that his grandmother would have 900 heads.
Yeah, and so it's the idea is that like, and also the version of like the text we have is unfinished. It just stops. Like that's what it meant, like badly preserved. We don't have the whole thing. Like reading the translations, there are like lines of dots that indicate where we just don't have whatever was going on there. So we don't know, but there's the idea that's like, yeah, this is like the one poem where Tyr is like one of the main characters.
So it's like Tyr brings up, he knows who has it, and then it's a like we just know it's two guys. One of them is at least Thor going on the adventure, so we gotta assume it's Tyr, right? No, why not assume it's Loki?
Because usually it's Loki, and actually after Tyr says, "Oh yeah, my father," they just travel, and Tyr's name isn't brought up again until the whole he can't lift up the kettle at the very end.
Weird.
So that's the thing, like, that is just interesting. Like, it is weird. Tyr's name occurs in what's like a keening element, which we've talked about. It's just like this poetic device.
Yep.
In the Skald Skamparmal, in reference to Odin. Like, he is called like warrior tier, god tier, like leader tier, things like that. Like the idea that like tier is being used in that form just to mean god. But this doesn't say like Snorri didn't know about him. Like he has a chapter in the Gylfaginning where he said that he's just asked like, well, Ganglir, he says like, what are some other Aesir? And Hai answers, Tyr is the name of another Aesir. He is the boldest and most courageous, and is very much up to him who wins the battle. The actions of men he is good to invoke. The expression goes that a man is Tyr courageous if he is the type who advances out into the front, never losing courage. He's also so wise that a clever person is said to be Tyr wise. Then he goes on to talk about the Aesir trying to lure Fenrir in and him putting his hand in getting this. Because of this, Tyr is one-handed, and men do not think of him as a peacemaker. So there's this, him being mentioned like belief of being very wise and very like courageous in battle, very noble. There's kind of an idea that like Odin, this figure may have been like far more prominent, and Odin, as he gained popularity, kind of usurped the position and elements of this original tier deity figure, whatever he was at his fullest like concept. We just don't know that anymore. And speaking of things that we don't know, let's talk about Heimdall.
Okay.
Because DJ,
what's up?
You're gonna be surprised to know we don't know fucking shit about Heimdall. And not in the whole he's only mentioned twice and we don't know what's up. Like, we've had figures that's like, yeah, so-and-so's brother, and they're never mentioned again. Like, Heimdall's mentioned. We know things about him, but we don't know or understand why, though. So, DJ, to start, what do you remember about Heimdall from the Magnus books?
He had a high-pitched voice and a phablet. Remember when phablets were about to be a thing, and then everyone's like, this is too big.
Yeah, and then phones just got a little bigger.
And phones got like a touch bigger, but they're not like
usable.
But they're not like phablet big.
No. But they became because you want a phablet. It's like, well, phones are just a little too small to do what we want them to do, so we just made them a little bit bigger.
For those of you who don't know how big a phablet was, it's about as big as a Kindle.
Yeah,
it was like a Kindle, but with phone functionality. And
which
they were like fucking I can't believe it. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and he wants to take selfies with all of the world.
Yeah.
And he turns his horn into a selfie stick?
I guess. No, his sword.
Oh, right. Yeah, his sword is a selfie.
Stick.
That's so funny. Yeah, this is, of all of the characters who are very, very silly in a Riordan version, I think Heimdall is the silliest.
A little goofy.
Mm-hmm. And at one point, Samira declares that she will only ever like marry Ymir because Heimdall is associated with vows and marriage, I guess.
Due to his 9 mothers, I think it was.
Yes, he does have 9 mothers. So, here's the thing.
The only thing we actually see is that he's in charge of the Bifrost and he's got 9 mothers. Those are the only 2 facts we actually know about him from the Eddas.
Yeah. And one of those things, and both of them perplex scholars to no end.
Like why? What the fuck? 9 moms?
Yeah. Every time we get a fact about him, they're just like, but what does this mean? And I was going to save the 9 moms thing, but like, yeah, let's talk about the 9 moms thing. It's on the fucking table, so let's just get at it. So, the 9 moms thing comes from a line in the Prose Edda where Heimdall is mentioned.
He just pulled the shit out of his ass. Like, yeah, he's got 9 moms.
He's got 9 moms. No, so this follows 2 chapters after mentioning Tyr. He's just listing off like different gods, right? So Heimdall is one. He is called the White God and is powerful and sacred. 9 maidens, all sisters, gave birth to him as their son. Talk about a fucking group project. His teeth are gold. He has a horse called Galtrop. He lives near the Bifrost at a place called Himideborg. He is the watchman of the gods and sits at Heaven's Inn, where he keeps watch over the bridge against the mountain giants. He needs less sleep than a bird and can see equally as well by night or day at the distance of 100 leagues. He hears the grass growing on the earth and wool on sheep, as well as everything else that makes a noise. He has a horn known as Gallarhorn, and its blast can be heard in all worlds. Heimdall's sword is called a head, and it's the phrase of that. But the 9 moms thing is not something Snorri just pulled out of nowhere. He cites a poem, which is...
How did you pronounce his horn's name?
I definitely said it's Gallarh.
Gallarhorn.
Gallarhorn. Yeah. So he cites Furthermore, he says himself in a poem, in Heimdall's chants, "Of 9 mothers, I am the child. Of 9 sisters, I am the son." And so that, yes, we get it from Snorri, because Snorri just so happens to be the only place where this is preserved, because we don't have the rest of that poem. Like, you know how we've talked about this sometimes, where sometimes there's just a passage and we're just like, where the hell is this coming from?
Yeah.
This time he actually happens to cite the name of it himself. We don't have that poem. So that's what perplexed scholars, because they're like, what does that mean?
Why couldn't you fucking write this shit down, Snorri?
Where's this at? So there's another fragmented poem, and it's called Volspa Himskama, where the names of his 9 mothers are mentioned. I'm not going to list them. That's not interesting. It's actually
the 9 muses.
And wouldn't that be interesting?
Little do you know.
Little do you know. This is the Multiverse of Madness. So you have these names. In Norse mythology, there is actually a group of 9 women that is pretty prominently known, and they are the 9 daughters of Aegir and Ran, the personifications of the waves. And so scholars have suggested that as it says, they're like the son of 9 sisters, this would make him essentially the son of the waves, the child of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the names of the 9 daughters don't match the names that are in this poem. So there's an argument that, like, no, it's not them because they don't match. But John Lindau has actually proposed that there may have been 2 different traditions regarding Heimdall's parentage. One where here are these women, they're listed to the 9. And then another where it's like, yeah, here are the 9 sisters. So that doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't the 9 daughters of the sea gods. It just means in some traditions it was, in some traditions it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But why and what that has to do with anything, and why that was important enough for Snorri to mention but not to extrapolate on because it was so well known. Okay, man, you want to know some other weird things that we know but don't understand about Heimdall? He's associated with rams. Why? No idea. Just none.
Because he can hear their wool growing.
He can hear their wool growing, so maybe it's that. Another idea that's like kind of perplexing is that him having a horn maybe is not a thing.
The Gjallarhorn's not a thing?
It could be a thing. Like, there is a Gjallarhorn, but it's that it's kind of maybe associated with rivers of an underworld where you gain wisdom from.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Sibyl's prophecy, there's a stanza that, with the word that's being used, can be translated by scholars as horn or as hearing. And so Henry Adams Bellow's translation of this stanza is, "I know of the horn of Heimdall, hidden under the high-reaching holy tree. On it pulls from Vafather's pledge a mighty stream. Would you yet know more?" And then in Caroline Larrington's translation, she knows that Heimdall's hearing is hidden under the radiant sacred tree. She sees pouring down the muddy torrent from the wager of the father of the slain. Do you understand yet, or what more?
It could be a context-based thing. Because, I mean, the hearing doesn't make any sense. And the little I know of Korean, context is, like, matters a lot due, like, for sentence structure.
Yeah.
Depending on how you're using a word and, like, what comes after it. It's, like, it's how that word is actually supposed to be translated.
That's a really good point. And so what's interesting is that scholars have speculated on that it's the Heimdaller Hildjord. And the thing is that, like...
J's are pronounced like y.
Hildjord.
There you go.
Thank you. Heimdaller Hildjord. And so Snorri mentions it in the Prose Edda, but there's the idea that maybe he's confused it with the Gjallarhorn because there's no other use of the word Hildjord being used in the sense of horn in Icelandic. So it's actually maybe more likely to be hearing, and that when it's translated as horn, it's those who are being influenced by Snorri. Larrington has actually said that if it is hearing rather than horn, as it appears in the stanza, it could indicate that Heimdall, like Odin, left a body part in the well. Like the Mimir's well where Odin left his eye.
Left an ear?
He potentially left an ear. And that may be why he can hear so well and maybe see so far. Like, he sacrificed something to gain this thing. And we don't know, but that's pretty cool. And the other time Heimdall's mentioned is when he literally does blow a horn and it starts the battle. So that might be why horn is being used in that earlier stanza, when it could actually be referring to his hearing, just conflating the two.
Yeah.
Another time he is mentioned is Loki's choral again.
Loki, you're being an asshole. Fucking
Loki's just being a dick again, ruining the party because he's just
because
mad.
people are just having a good time.
People are having a good time, and he's just pissed about something. I don't know, man. We used to all be friends. We used to hang out.
I used to fucking just pull like pranks on Thor. It was good fun.
No, he'd roll up and help Thor. Heimdall says, "Drunk you are, Loki, so that you're out of your wits. Why don't you stop speaking? Far too much drinking affects every man, so he doesn't notice his talkativeness." Loki said, "Be silent, Heimdall, for you in bygone days a hateful life was decreed. A mucky back you must always have, and watch as the guard of the gods." Like, implying that this position Heimdall has is disgraceful?
It's ridiculous. Why would it be?
Exactly. Why would
a guard has never been disgraceful in almost anything.
Yeah, Loki's just a dick. So that line of like a mucky back, it implies that like maybe Heimdall has to sit under Yggdrasil, and so he's often sitting.
He's often sitting and just not doing his job, probably.
Oh no, I don't think it is. It's like he just like implies like, oh, your back's always dirty because you just stood against the tree.
So, but it's
exactly.
Word tree.
It's just.
It's the tree, bro. What?
We're pretty far into this at this point, and he is just fucking pulling at straws. Or actually, yeah, because then Thor shows up not long after. So, but the regards to Heimdall guarding the bridge is another thing he's associated with that scholars find fascinating and can't really like pinpoint down. Oh, before I get too far on this, Heimdall and Loki kill each other in Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
We know that. We've mentioned that. I just need to decide it. That's Heimdall's fate. Tyr's fate is he gets swallowed by Garp, the hound of hell. We've talked about this. I think I mentioned that this beast may have at one point been just Fenris Wolf again.
Yeah.
There's this passage at the top of the Seer's prophecy. It's super weird. Like this is like Heimdall's weird because of things like this. "Here I ask from all the tribes, greater and lesser, the offspring of Heimdall, father of the slain, you wish for me to declare living beings ancient stories. Those I remember from the furthest back." So that line about offspring of Heimdall also stumps scholars because they're like, what the fuck does that mean? What do you mean offspring of Heimdall? Are you referring to humanity? It sounds like you are, but where does that come from? This comes from, they believe, a poem called The List of Rig, in which a, quote, old and wise, mighty and strong god named Rig travels around sleeping with human couples. The wife gets pregnant, and he fathers 3 sons who become the 3 classes of humanity. Don't ask me what those classes are. I try to figure out. One of them becomes a king. One of them is a warrior class. I don't understand. This was weird.
It's mage, rogue, and fighter. Or I guess mage, ranger, and fighter. Because, like, you know, a ranger could become a rogue or an archer. And it's, you know, that's just the 3 classes of humanity.
So, this is weird. And there's a prose introduction.
Support, tank, and damage.
3 classes. So your support tank. Yeah, those are the 3 classes when you boil them down to their core elements. Are you support, are you tank, or are you damage?
Yeah.
So there's a prose introduction of this poem that cites Heimdall as being the true identity of Rig. And so this reference of like, oh, Heimdall's offspring kind of cites him as like, he is the father of all humanity because he created the classes that we operate within today. But that's also super weird because this poem we have is yet another incomplete text, specifically written in the 14th century, which is pretty late in the game for all of these texts. And so scholars, including a gentleman named Finnur Johnson, but probably not pronounced that way, and Rudolf Semek again, have noted that the role of Rig in this poem is like way more in line with the shit that Odin does. Like running around in disguise and like shaping the way humanity operates. Like that's his whole thing. And so they've actually suggested that because Heimdall is not mentioned in the poem anywhere. The only way we know, quote, that this is Heimdall is from that introduction. And so they have actually suggested that the prose introduction naming Heimdall was meant to just like conform with the stanza of the Sibyl's prophecy, where like someone's trying to figure out, well, what does it mean? What does that stanza mean? Oh, well, it must reference, he just must be the figure in this poem. Mm-hmm. But they're of the belief that it was far more likely Odin. So that's the thing, is that like he is weird. It's just weird. He's just related with liminal space and boundaries and borders and transitions, but has 9 moms and they're all sisters and is the offspring of humanity, but isn't, and is associated with goats, but why? And can hear, but sometimes it's a horn. Like, that's the thing about Heimdall, is that we know things about him way more than we know someone who's only named like once, right?
Yeah.
But like the things that we know about him are just so perplexing because the scholarship, we don't have the cultural context for any of this. And I didn't plan this when I combined these 3 figures like Asgard, Tyr, and Heimdall. I just figured this will work. But they all ended up really underlining something that we've mentioned and danced around but haven't spent a long time reflecting on. How we don't know anything about Norse. And
we had that one episode at kind of explaining everything.
Yeah.
Editing the edits.
Yeah, we had editing edits where we acknowledge that this thing we have is not what it was. But like,
the more we've dived into it, the more it's like, wow, we really
don't. Like, the fact that scholars are like, what do you mean you have 9 moms and you're the son of 9 sisters? Like, what does that mean? And it's like, I don't know. But Snorri says it with such confidence and cites a poem that it must have been known. Like, and Tyr being a name that just means God, and now is like this pretty minor figure, that can't have always been the way. And like, Asgard is only mentioned like 3 times, and is it even the same place as Eidenhall? And is it actually where Odin's Hall is at? Like, we don't know. And honestly, we'll probably never know. Like, we can still find archaeological stuff. Like, there was this really cool artifact found in like 2015 that has like, it was found in England and it had Old Norse on it, and it was this like spinning pool thing, which is like a device you'd use when spinning yarn. It would just help you spin it or like weave it. Mm-hmm. And it has like Odin, Heimdall, and some other name that they're not sure what it means, but like calling them to help with this task. And that's cool, but why? And it's like, we don't know. And we're never gonna know.
I wonder if we just like somehow manage to get those like radio, the way we can like see deep into the earth. Just start doing that all throughout Europe.
And just find all
just all throughout Europe. You know, find every fucking thing that's like not a rock, like not just a fucking rock.
But sometimes it is a rock.
Oh yeah, sometimes
it's a rock with runes carved into it.
Carved rock. But it's like just like see if we can find anything larger. And you're like, wow, this is like a fucking, I don't know, sword, just some shit like that, just buried. Just start doing it all throughout Europe.
Just want to find,
just randomly, like enough with this. I think it's over here bullshit. Just like I'm gonna check middle of Germany, some crazy fucking forest that's kind of a clearing, but you know, maybe it's a natural clearing. Nobody's ever fucking been here, you know.
I mean, there's parts of the world and there's archaeological discoveries and anthropological discoveries that we'll still make that could help shine more light on these things. And maybe that poem that Heimdall mentions having 9 moms, maybe there's a copy out there somewhere. Like, maybe we will find it written in Old Norse and know more about what this meant culturally.
I say grave robbing.
You say grave robbing? You know, it's okay if it's European grave robbing.
I think it's okay, period. I say we go down to our local cemetery
and just see what we can shake out.
Pulling shit up, okay? Who's taking care of those unmarked graves anymore? Fucking nobody. They've deteriorated so goddamn much.
No.
There's moss growing on that grave. There's no more name. It's withered away. Who knows who this bastard was? Let's see what he's got.
just here in your local town. Just see what he's hiding. Oh my God, it's the Ark of the Covenant.
You're right. Like, what is he doing with like a full copy of the Poetic Edda. Like, this is ridiculous. What the fuck are you talking about?
Here in Texas, crazy.
Like, it's a perfect copy.
It's got poems we never even had before. Crazy. All right. So yeah, that's just something I really hit me a lot researching this episode. Was like, wow, we really don't know anything about this. And the more we dig into it and the more we discuss on this podcast, damn, the less I know. Yeah. The less I know about any of this. What was Tyr the god of? Well, that's an interesting question. And what did Heimdall do? Well, that's an interesting question. But you know what we can talk about?
SMITE.
DJ, tell us about Tyr and Heimdall and SMITEs.
So, obviously they got lore.
Yep.
Tyr is an older god. So his lore is a little different than what we've been seeing.
Oh,
recently.
he's been around for a while?
Oh, yeah. I think he was like a season 1 or 2 god.
That's an interesting pull. Yeah.
Tyr, the embodiment of mankind's impossible ideals. Man is a malleable creature, but a god is stone, shaped only by the harsh weather of expectation, and none have a greater burden of expectation than Tyr. For he is courage, he is honor, he is justice. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to face the frightening. Fenrir, the mighty wolf, was foretold to wreak such devastation on the gods that they sought to bind him. Tyr, clothed in courage, brought the beasts to their prison, where the gods prepared shackles. Honor is not a stubborn oath, but the integrity to uphold what is right, even when it is not easy. Under the guise of a test of strength, twice the gods bound Fenrir, and twice he broke free. On the third attempt, Fenrir sensed a trick and demanded one of the gods place their hand in his mouth. If the binding proved to be magical, Fenrir would take the hand. Tyr agreed. Justice is not adherence to the law, but a code of fairness and morality. Bound by the magical ribbon, Fenrir devoured Tyr's hand. It was a price to be paid, and Tyr paid it willingly. Even Fenrir deserved justice. One-handed, Tyr is worshipped as a pinnacle of righteousness, called upon for valor in battle, balance in law, and the fortitude to face the impossible. As the cloud of war blackens the world and fear grips the people, Tyr is stooped by the weight of expectation. With blade in hand, he takes the field, for he is courage, he is honor, he is justice.
I like that.
It's really cool.
I think that does a lot of filling in the spaces with Tyr and what we have and what he represents.
Yeah. He is a warrior. He has an interesting kit because he's technically got a stance change, and typically with a stance change that kind of changes. I guess not really. It changes how the abilities function, but doesn't change the ability entirely for most stance changing gods. I guess for like 3 or 4. But for Tyr, he's like got a swipe, and his 2 stances are attack, so he does more damage in attack, and defense, and he'll get like more defensive attributes in defense, obviously.
Nice, yeah.
And he's got like a swipe where he just swipes a sword in front of him. He has a dash where when he's doing an attack, it pulls people along. Like he pushes people with his dash, knocks them up, and he can swipe again to like knock them up again.
Well, he wouldn't knock them up. That's Heimdall's thing.
What? I mean, Heimdall also knocks people up.
Sorry, go on.
In defense form, his dash just like knocks people to the side, but doesn't pull it with him in front of him, you know? And his swipe heals for the like a certain amount for how many people he hits.
Nice.
And then his ult is like he jumps, and when he's in defensive, it stuns, and when he's in attack, it does more damage.
Nice.
He's fun to play. Annoying to deal with, but not like the most annoying to deal with. Like
who's the most annoying to deal with?
Oh, fuck. Hercules.
Really? What makes Hercules the most annoying?
He's tanky. He's damage. He's got it all except for range.
He's Hercules.
He's Hercules. It's ridiculous. I cannot believe that they did not change that man from season 1. And then Heimdall's in SMITE too.
Yeah.
I mean SMITE as well, not SMITE.
Not SMITE. I know we have to specify.
Yeah, right. It's fucking ridiculous.
Homonyms. Homophones? Homonym.
Homophones. Phones is the sound. Nym is the meaning.
Go on.
I think, yeah. Yeah, words that are different with similar meanings, I think. No, that's...
Read and read?
Synonyms. I think read and read, it's words that sound the same but are different. Fuck, I don't know. I don't care.
No, not what this episode is about.
All paths have their guardians, and no guardian is more steadfast in their duties than keen-eyed Heimdall, sentinel of the Bifrost. The watchman of Asgard is a sentry without equal in the 9 realms, and he maintains his eternal watch where the rainbow bridge meets the sky. With sharp eyes and keen hearing, Heimdall stands guard over the halls of the gods, alert for the approach of any enemy as well as the first stirrings of Ragnarok. It is said that Heimdall requires less sleep than a bird and can see hundreds of leagues.
Hey!
His hearing is so sharp that he can perceive the soft whisper of growing grass and the murmur of the dead. His trumpet, Gjallarhorn, can be heard across the 9 worlds when blown, but it is not only senses which make Heimdall a superb sentinel. He also possesses the gift of foresight, allowing him to predict his opponent's movements before they occur and to sense the approach of inimical forces. As befitting one of the Aesir, he is a masterful combatant, and his foreknowledge gives him an edge over all but the most unpredictable, or skilled, of opponents. 2, it is whispered that Heimdall has some connection to Yggdrasil, the world tree. Some insist he is fashioned whole from a splinter of the great ash tree, while others believed he is bound to it in some fashion, not like Ratatoskr. Whatever the case, it is known that Heimdall takes a dim view of any who might threaten Yggdrasil. Thus, when his keen gaze settled upon the creeping tendrils of Persephone's minions, drawing ever closer to the world tree, Heimdall moved instantly to confront them. Powerful as she was, even the queen of the underworld could not hide her intentions from the watchmen of the Asgard.
You talked about that, how Ragnarok.
I think
obviously
I'm pretty sure Persephone showed up before, like the update before Heimdall.
That's cool. I will say that being able to hear the dead, way cooler than hearing wool grow on a sheep. So because they were like, oh, the bird, the grass. Let's change this line to make it a little cooler.
Yeah.
Hey, DJ?
Huh?
How much sleep does a bird need? Don't Google it, just guess.
No, like, here's the thing. When you said that, I'm like, a bird probably needs like a standard amount of sleep, it feels like. Maybe like a touch more. They're like, sure, they got small bodies, but.
According to birdsupplies.com, most birds need about 10 to 12 hours of uninterrupted sleep a night, and the exact amount depends on the species.
Yeah, it's like, So
we have here.
Maybe it's
just a lack of zoological knowledge.
Yeah, maybe it's because a bird could probably
go from dead asleep to flying.
To immediately. And like, even if you like startle a bird awake, it could probably immediately take off.
So it just assumes they need less sleep. Although this website, Science of Birds, instead of sleeping 8 hours at a time, birds only sleep a few minutes at a time, but they often do repeatedly. And then here's another thing that says parrots need 10 to 12. In researching this subject. So, you know what? Maybe birds only need a couple minutes of sleep, but they need it a lot. Either way, it sounds like birds need a fair amount of sleep.
Yeah. Heimdall sends people to Muspelheim and Niflheim with his ult. It's really
That's
funny.
Cool.
He just like,
do you get to pick?
No. So it's it's a dash, and if you get hit by the dash, he fucking smacks you with his big ass axe.
Nice.
Which he's a hunter, so he throws that axe and it does chunky damage.
That's really good.
But yeah, he smacks you with it, and he sends you through the Bifrost. It's actually kind of like you're breaking through the walls of reality to get through these things, because it's like, and then you're in the Muspelheim. That's fire, right? That's the fireplace?
Yeah, Muspelheim is fireplace.
Yeah. It's, you go, he's like, to Muspelheim with you, and he fucking sends you through it, and then you crash through into Niflheim, and then you crash through back.
You told me about that. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Super dope. It's such a cool ass ult. And so it's just like fully remove somebody from battle for like 2 seconds.
That's a big chunk of time for that. Yeah. I mean, the only example of Heimdall I could think of was from Marvel Thor. I don't actually think I've read a comic with Heimdall in it. So I do only have MCU Thor with Idris Elba, who is great.
He's wonderful. He did a great job.
And brings like the deepest gravitas and the gold eyes, and he fights Loki. Yeah, when Loki, in the end of I remember the first movie, he's like, I have to serve the king. And Loki's like trying to like throw his weight around. And Heimdall's like, fuck this shit, I'm not playing this game. Because he's refusing to open the Bifrost for him. And Loki freezes him. Yeah. But it's cool. Heimdall's great.
Heimdall's fun. Big fan of that man.
Him getting killed by Thanos was a big bummer. Like, wow, that let you know Infinity War was not going to be a fun movie. Like, you really, from the
That
jump.
and Loki's death, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, Heimdall and Loki back to back. Like,
right
oh,
at the start,
shit.
Hulk gets fucking thrashed by Thanos.
Mm-hmm. Backhanded
and you're like, oh,
out.
yeah, it's not. He's not.
Yeah,
like,
he's not.
Thanos isn't here to fuck around.
Yeah.
He's here to get his...
He's
here to get his will done.
Like, we just took down 3... like A tier, S tier fighters right here. Like, yeah, Loki doesn't usually go front, but like that was crazy.
Yeah.
But I also did like at the end of Thor: Love and Thunder, after Jane Foster dies, she wakes up in Valhalla, and Heimdall's the one that greets her. We also have Heimdall's son running around.
Yeah.
We had no idea he had a kid, but he's got his dad's ability to see, and I'm like, oh, that's like real cute. I like that. Oh, that's so sad, but yeah. Anyway, Idris Elba is always great.
He's good. I still need to see the Sonic 2.
Oh yeah,
He does Knuckles.
He is Knuckles. That's so funny. And then we already talked about the Bifrost being a wormhole, which I really like. I think that's really cool.
I think it definitely. They could have just had it been magic though.
It is magic. It's just magic with the science word attached to it. The Asgardians are able to open a magical portal from one place to another, what we identify as being a wormhole or an Einstein-Rosen bridge.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. I also like how it looks.
Oh, it looks
that
great.
like
It's
swirling rainbow, because it's light.
And it
it's just
leaves that
fractured
imprint
light.
in the ground. That's
yeah,
super dope.
get that cool. Yeah, that's always really good. I don't have a lot to say about it usually, and I think that's something that they really leaned into for the movies, because I think usually it's just like a legit rainbow bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like they could really walk on it and stuff. It's not quite this like portal thing. And DJ, you were saying earlier you don't like the fact that it can destroy places. But it's a wormhole. If you just open up a wormhole somewhere, it's going to suck everything into it if it's open for too long.
Yeah, but I'll have to look at the movie again, but it doesn't look like it's sucking anything into it. It literally just looks like it's drilling and destroying everything in its path. It looks like a fucking orbital space laser.
Okay, I think you are right. It's just drilling deeper into
Like, that's all that's happening.
I think it's like,
and it's just cutting through the planet. I'm like, what?
And that's why it's only open for a second. Because it'll just keep driving forward.
Yeah. Anytime I think of them traveling through it, in Ragnarok, they're Loki and Thor going through, and Thor looks down. He's like, Loki, and Hela's behind them, right?
Oh yeah.
There was a meme where it was, instead of Hela, it was Master Chief.
Why was it Master Chief?
Because there was I can't remember what game it was because I don't play these games. But there's a game where he is flying through like a blue portal style thing that looks like but it's just Loki, and it's just like Loki looks back and Master Chief and the fucking Halo theme plays, and it's really funny.
That is funny. That's some absurdist stuff. That's real good.
I love it.
I don't like Heimdall in Magnus Chase. I think.
Yeah. I think the problem is Idris Elba just like set the standard.
And then the flip side, I like Loki, even though I love Tom Hiddleston's Loki. I like Thor, even though I like Chris Hemsworth. I like other characters.
Just like why give him the high pitched voice and be like addicted to Vine? Yeah,
that was so funny. I don't know. It's not bad. I think it's silly. It's one of those things where it's like, well, it's memorable for the kids, but it's just like, I don't know. It just feels like the only thing here is a joke and there's no character. And then he does see the bridge. We didn't talk about the bridge so much in the Magnus ones, where it's like this
it's
massive
just a rainbow bridge.
Well, he describes it as like it's not like it's a rainbow, but it's like an atomic explosion.
Yeah.
But then they're on it at one point in time, and I'm like, this is fine.
They cross it with a big neon sign.
Yeah, there's a neon sign that they can cross to because it's the light. And I do like the scene where Magnus helps open Hymir's mind by having him look up at the Rainbow Bridge and is like actively healing him and keeping his mind together while his like reality is being unraveled. That's a good scene. Heimdall's really silly, but you know what? That's a good scene.
It's a great scene, but yeah, if you give Heimdall just a little more like guardian energy.
That's the other thing. Maybe it's the juxtaposition. You're expecting like a noble guardian, and so you get someone
He's like hi.
Yeah,
I like doing vines. I'm like, fuck me, dude. Okay.
You'd be doing TikTok dances now.
Yeah, actually.
That would be funny. I know the idea of like being seen and seeing all the things and like social media being that window to it
Gjallarhorn is the phablet.
It
what
is.
It was.
That's right. There's something there. I think it just is a joke.
It didn't.
And we don't get
It
doesn't
arguably didn't even land when it was fucking.
No, I read that book when it came out.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's an interesting idea in that, but I think it is one of those times where it's just we only did the joke and there was no character here. And not that like Heimdall does a lot, but I don't know. And maybe just going through it where it's like, I don't know, this is weird. We don't even know what the hell's going on here. So just here. That's all I got for you.
Yeah.
I guess. Whatever. But yes, this episode is just a fun reminder that we don't know anything about Norse mythology. So don't worry about it. It's fine.
Not at all. Yeah, it's whatever.
DJ, what should our listeners do now?
They should go over to patreon.com/Muses of Mythology. We got a bunch of wonderful content. We have just as much bonus content as there is main feed episodes. So you quite literally get twice the amount of content that we have.
And this is just for $5 a month.
For $5. And you get even more for 10.
Yeah.
You also get access to a Discord that is quite active.
Lots of fun exclusive pictures of the cats.
Yep.
Of Cash the dog.
Yep. Which he's moving around right now.
It's okay. He doesn't have his collar. He's naked, so he's not going to distract anybody. We are less than 40 days from Musemas returning.
Musemas is going to come back. I am so excited. We got a ton of really cool episodes for you guys. It's going to be wonderful.
12 back-to-back daily episodes about A Christmas Carol. It is the weirdest thing we do all year.
Yep.
And I look forward to it so much.
It's going to be such a blast.
Get more Muses by checking that out. You can also hit us up on Instagram. Follow us on X, Twitter, see DJ stuff. You can also follow us on YouTube if that's what you want to do, or TikTok. I don't think I've ever mentioned, we're actively there too. I mean, actively. I post stuff there. I don't engage there, but like
Darren posts, I was about to say shorts because I'm on YouTube Shorts.
It is shorts. It's the shorts, it's the TikTok. They're all the same. And if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see them first.
Yeah, you'll see them all over the place.
So wherever you want to go, I've made it so easy for people to consume the podcast in other ways. So
we'd love to see you on all of them.
Or whatever your favorite one is, hit us up. We will be back in your ears on Tuesday, November 19th to talk about the Hymir and the Valkyrie.
Ooh,
finally getting to the episode in which that almost broke the podcast.
You know, it took a bit. We're very excited for it.
Then until then, don't be like Zeus.
Don't be like Zeus.
Muses of Mythology is created and hosted by Darien and DJ Smartt. It's edited by Darien Smartt. The show is produced by Darien and DJ Smartt, as well as
Tim O'Connor, The Crystal Conman, Nicholas Miller. Our music is Athens Festival by Martin Hain, and our cover art is by Audrey Miller. You can find her on Instagram at Bombshell Nutshell Art.
Want more Muses of Mythology? Support the show on Patreon. Just $1 gets you exclusive bonus content. Get more at patreon.com/Muses of Mythology.
You can also support the show by leaving a review at lovethepodcast.com/Muses of Mythology, or tell a friend why you love the show.
Don't forget to check out all of our episodes and episode transcripts at musesofmythology.com.
Thanks for listening.